Hey, yeah.
He thinks that.
And we are live.
It's the commitment for the city budget.
All right.
He said that.
Welcome to the City of Wildwood Planning and Parks Committee meeting for Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. Ms. Ripito, would you please call the roll?
Chair Galani. Acting Chair Rambo.
Here.
Councilmember Preston.
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Here.
Councilmember Mabry. Councilmember McCutcheon.
Here.
Councilmember Krantz.
Great. I have no opening remarks other than everyone needs to be on their best behavior because I'm not gonna nonsense as the chair of as the honorary or the substitute chair. I'm not I don't think we voted. That was a question that I had. Did we vote for, because I certainly don't
You may have
recall
been gone
being.
that day, that's why you got it.
Oh, okay. Okay, guys. So, the first up is approval of the minutes from the Tuesday, September 17th, 2024 meeting. Have a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
One and two. All right. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, minutes are approved. Moving right along. Welcome, Mr. Mabry.
Yes, thank you. Pardon my apologies, my tardiness. I was meeting with a resident about an issue, safety, and I realize I cannot use that excuse again for at least another year.
I don't know how that works, but it's up to Melanie. She's the gatekeeper, but I don't think you missed much. So is there do we have any public comments? Nobody's here and
If anyone currently online would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature and we'll promote you to a panelist. We have no
Guess
public
not.
comments.
okay, so we'll roll right into action items. First up, for planning and parks matters up for consideration. The first and most important being the department's operating and capital budgets for fiscal year 2025. Take it away, Mr. Lee.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Rambo. In this case, we are seeing somewhat of an increase across operating costs, and we could dive into the capital improvement sales tax fund. I wanted to first and foremost apologize for not getting this to you sooner. We will be sending the link to these documents right after this, and we'll have the full budget produced to you by the end of this week. So just a heads up there. On top though, here we are seeing a nominal increase, approximately 4.8%. On the staff side, and that goes across different our health insurance, things along those lines that we provide as benefits to our employees. On the actual operating expenditures we'll start with parks. The couple items we just wanted to call out because there's not too many that have changed drastically. The service contract line item, the 4262, has increased quite a bit, and that revolves around our toilet services, really. That's the majority of this cost. If you go down to operating expenditures under.
So which page are
262.
you looking at? This,
Yes, yeah.
Pie chart.
this. Which is underneath.
Sorry, quite a bit of second. Wait for everybody to get their place.
And recreation.
Once everybody's ready, we can jump right back in.
Yes, go right ahead, sir.
Thank you.
Page numbers would probably be handy, Tom.
Yeah, we'll get some page numbers on there, 100%. In this case, for the service contracts, 262 specifically, that has seen a pretty drastic increase. We've been seeing these costs rise, and it revolves around the individuals that go in and clean our bathrooms at our parks, but also put up the porta potties that we have. And it is something where they've had a lot of trouble finding the individuals, but if we were to decrease it, we'd practically be having to take away some of our bathroom services that we have to residents. So this is kind of the situation we're in. We're definitely open to suggestions, but right now it seems like the cost increases. That number just keeps rising. So we want to account for it on the front end versus having it kick us at the end of the year. On top of that, and we can kind of just go over the top level items and kind of break these up. We also wanted to point to the concert series. We are looking at slight increase, $20,000 for 2025. When we did mid-year, that was before our August back-to-school concert, so those invoices hadn't come in. That is when we rent out all the kids' gear and the rock wall and the clowns. And we have quite a bit of additional expense that goes on top of just the standard hot dogs and soft drinks that we provide. And we found that we're sitting around that number, around that 80,000 number anyways. We've been around it for 2022 and 2023. And with the increases in cost of inflation, those are where it starts to creep in.
And it's still on the service contracts.
No, this is moving to.
This is 351.
Yep, 351, concert series, formerly 720.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, everyone. So yes, this is moving to 351, because literally the service contracts, that also does include the portion of parks, that does cover MyGov. So MyGov has a portion of it. Everyone kind of pays for their own portion. So that includes that, but the other costs really are revolving around bathroom maintenance, which have been extremely expensive over the last couple of years. On top of that, though, when it comes to the concert, we're sitting around that a little bit north of $70,000 each year. And those costs do seem to be somewhat steady, but they are increasing because the bands are costing a little bit more, and the actual service contracts included in those concerts are starting to cost more, like renting out the rock wall and things along those lines. And then I also wanted to point out, on top of that, we did at council last night discuss the Celebrate Wildwood budget. It did see an increase from the Wildwood Celebration Commission with a subsequent approval from the council of 95,000 versus the standard 90,000. That still is a decrease from previous years that we had, and this is 715 under special projects. But in that case, everything else other than employment under parks, it seems pretty closely in line with what we were able to do this year, some nominal increases to keep up with inflation. But other than that, the majority of the costs are going to be going toward, one last thing the biggest one that I wanted to point out was the 350-01 park maintenance. This is the one that really is starting to catch up on us. We have a really cool tool that we're trying to use now to try to combat this in 2025. We brought on someone and they're in our public works department, but they're actually isolating each of the properties in which we mow grass. So they're using GIS to go in and carve out the section of the area where we cut, and they're going to be able to determine how many square feet we're cutting in that area. So in that case, we usually, at this time, it's under our right-of-way maintenance agreements that we have contractors on call, and we would go by the hour because there was really no tangible way to measure it. Now, we're going to be trying to produce a secondary RFQ, if you will, that would ask them, hey, instead of what your hourly rate is, how much would it cost to do this cut? And then we would have, 50 different areas where they're cutting. In that case, that will go through council for approval once the RFP is ready to go, and then they could review the areas that are included. But really, that's the areas that we're sending them. We're hoping that they'll come back to us and know that we know exactly how many feet that are being cut. So that would hopefully lower the cost, because we've both this and in public works or right-of-way maintenance, both of those are the two costs that just keep going up, especially with the storms that we've had for right-of-way. We can't get too far into that weeds, but with the storms we've had when we're clearing roads, that has been the most tedious and most expensive thing that's been coming across our desk. It just.
Did you want to finish up?
I guess we can kind of break it up. Parks operate it.
Okay, good. Mr. Mabry.
Thank you. That allow both, that'll facilitate multiple awards, but is that legal? Can we
Yes.
carve up and cherry pick low bids in certain?
Yeah, so how we do it.
Bids now, but
Yeah.
low bids.
So how we do our right-of-way maintenance now is individuals can bid on different parts. So, if you're the person that's gonna be filling in potholes, that's one thing you could bid on. Or if you're gonna be the person that's gonna be trimming down the sidewalk, you can have a kind of a Rolodex, if you will, but they have to apply and fill out an application and put it together numbers for our bid that we go out to. So we just actually got our numbers in for our right-of-way maintenance, but this is gonna be a separate component that is just for grass cutting. So right now, we technically have contractors on file next year that we could call and say, hey, we need this cut or we need this landscaped. And that's another component. We're adding in landscaping too. So there'll be two layers, one color showing the total area in which you're gonna cut. And then a smaller area that shows, hey, this actually has landscaping upkeeping that you have to maintain as well. That does typically come with a little bit of a higher cost. In this case, it's translated into more time. But yeah, no, it's not illegal. And in this case, we're able to have multiple contractors, but we usually select one or two to go forward with for a right of way cutting. And then sometimes if we have someone that's been good with our parks, I know we've used Gailey a lot, they've cut our parks.
I was attacking it from a different angle. And I hear 50 of anything. That's 50 things that are identifiably separate that many landscaping contractors would give their IT for 25 of those things. 20, carve it up so that we could appear and we could actually be, in addition to appearance, we could be facilitating or supporting smaller scale contractors if they're local and if they're responsive and if they're low. But there are a lot of contractors that are good quality, but they can't handle 50 of anything. That might be their entire client list for the year. And I don't know how big our parks are, but they're certainly scads bigger than anybody's individual home. So we could be attracting a different level of quality, with size, and support local business too, if they're already happening.
So typically, yes, and we will have, what we'll do is we'll provide to the council, hey, we're wanting to move forward with X contractor at this rate for these items, for whatever, and there's so much in our right of way maintenance that it's a pretty large grouping of anywhere from grass cutting to filling in the streets. So in this case, we could do that, but typically we select one contractor. And if there's a great rate, then we would do it potentially for all three, but we typically do one that covers our trails and then one that covers our right of way and then one that can fill in. So we don't have too many that we go through, but that's typically the approach. We could broaden that though to have a bunch of people on call. But the thing is, they also want consistent business. That's another component that they want to know that they're at least going to get really 30 cuts out of the year at least. That is usually the benchmark of they're going to be able to cut whatever property you have outlined 30 times within the course of the year.
Katie was next.
I
Ms.
tried.
Dodwell, I'm sorry
It's okay.
you had your hand up first and I choked, so,
No, that's
you
okay.
done?
We covered it.
okay.
So everything's by the hour, not a flat rate?
Right now, it's by the hour, so that's what we're trying to fix. We're going to have a flat rate for each area that we're
So
cutting.
that'd be a lot easier to manage.
Yeah.
Budget, okay.
Well, it manage budget and really, I mean, call contractors out too. I mean, it calls them out on the front end, so you don't have to call them back later and say, did it really take you 3 hours to cut that area? It just more so, we're determining in a rate up front that would say, hey, to cut this, just like you would at your home, to cut my grass, it's gonna cost this amount flat.
Sooner you get to leave, that's right.
Yeah, so that is, so in that case, that's the approach we're looking at. We're gonna try to apply, one of our new employees is very talented with GIS. We're gonna try to apply that technology pretty much for all asset management. So this is just kind of the first step in many. Eventually, we hope, I don't wanna give out too many teasers, but eventually we wanna have our roads also categorized in these in GIS that would allow for us to see in real time how long it's been since those streets have been either maintained or driven for inspection.
Yes, sir.
Just follow-up question to, I mean, I kind of almost call that like, rating or like insurance type pricing where it's like, hey, we'll pay this much for this job and that's it. And see how many people, is there any database or any information available to us as a city to see what similar type and or maybe slightly larger cities are paying for such, service contracts and things of that sort?
There's not a database, but we could go to another city's website, go to their agendas, and we'd be able to find it. It would be under their right-of-way maintenance contract, their right-of-way maintenance bid that they put out each year too.
It'd be nice to see, if we've been paying a fair rate or we've been being taken or keep something honest. Cause I mean, if you come up with a rate that you want to pay for whatever square footage or be it the, lawns, parks and or roads, to have some sort of comparison to make sure that you know that it's a solid rate or, it's fair and to try and leverage your contracts a little bit more like that. Just my thought.
we would definitely need to do it on a square footage or mileage type of comparison, because obviously we've got hundreds of more miles of roadway that we have to take care of. We've got many more parks than the majority of the municipalities in the St. Louis County area would have, or even St. Charles counties.
And it will be interesting, a note on that, it will be interesting to see, and I'm a little interested myself because I know other cities are still utilizing the model where they're paying really more so by the hour for most of this work. Whereas we're gonna be kind of coming at it with this flat rate approach. So it will be interesting to see who's all switched from that model, because without the ability to go in and really highlight the area in which you're trying to cut, with GIS, you can't really determine the square footage unless you go out there and survey it yourself. So in this case, it should be helpful, but I'm also assuming that it could do one of two things. Contractors could see it as, I know exactly what I'm getting into and I can provide a rate for X dollars here. Or they may shy away. Well, it'll be interesting to see how many contractors actually respond to that, because they don't get to use the hourly rate, which I think, contractors typically, they push for that. So in this case, we will hold this kind of separated out from our traditional right of way, and pretty excited. We should have that ready to go by the end of this year. So then we can, by spring of next year, we're hopefully utilizing that model.
Great, I think that's great.
Your point.
Joe, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry, I didn't.
I just wanted to note relative to the actual process. Alwyn, Ellisville, Chesterfield, Eureka all have their own parks departments and public works departments, so they have employees that do the work our contractors do. So it won't be necessarily comparing apples to apples or oranges to oranges. I'm sure that across 88 municipalities, there's others that do it our way. But for the most part, we are unusual.
That is true too.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take that.
That's okay. I didn't see Joe, but Ms. Otwell.
Speaking to what you were just saying, a city like Ladue contracts out all of theirs. So I would say if we're gonna do comparative analysis, then let's pick a city that uses contractor work, not staff work. Chesterfield has hundreds of employees that, and the cost for that's probably even above what we're paying on of her hourly rate right now. And then the other question I had is, are we gonna be, or have we requested in these bids some kind of an emergency rate or a quick response rate because of just what we had to deal with last fall with the rain issues and people came in like that? I was totally amazed at how quick they were to respond.
So typically we have a couple contractors. We have our primary contractor, then we can make a call like that, like Go Green. They were our contractor previously. They don't do the majority of our work. They do some of our landscaping work. But when we were in a pinch, for example, we were setting up for Celebrate Wildwood and there was a flower bed that was missed. It didn't get mulched and it was right in the center of town center and it was gonna be really on display. So we were able to have them come out the day of before the event and actually put mulch down. So in this case, we do have those emergency rates built in, but they typically, unless it's a true emergency, won't charge that. They're trying to come back and hopefully make themselves look good for the bigger piece of the pie.
Ms. McCutcheon, did you have something?
I did, but it's kind of, I'm backing up a little bit, so
Sorry.
that's okay. With the cost of the restroom facilities, is it our restrooms or is it porta potties it's costing so much? What's the breakdown?
Joe, will you elaborate on that? Sure.
Well, as you know, many of our park sites as well as our trail corridors are not part of the metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District's boundary. So they're unserved for wastewater purposes. And probably when we started opening up like Al Foster Memorial Trail, the first thing we got was, we love the trail, we love the area. Is there any way we can get a restroom? And that's kind of where it all started. That was the first domino. So the charge includes the rental of the facility, and oftentimes there's a wash station, and then the cleaning. We clean during the high use months, which are generally from the beginning of spring to end of fall, anywhere from 3 or 4 times a week, just because of the utilization. And given the fact that people are people, it needs to be done because obviously they can get pretty pretty uncomfortable pretty quickly. So we rent the facility, there's a charge. We have them cleaned at least 3 to 4 times a week. And then ultimately, like I say, there are emergencies. We have facilities that have to be pumped out because they store the wastewater inside of a tank, and it all adds up. The thing that we've noticed in 2024, so more so than any of the other years, is public water closet was going through a transition. And what we were seeing is a lot of their longtime employees had left, and there was a group of new hires that had taken over. And many of them didn't stay long. The ones that did stay and that were good were basically working double shifts. And so there was a lot of overtime factored into the cost this year. Just we had a few people doing a lot of work. We don't anticipate that in 2025. It's really stabilized the last month or two. Chris, Stacy, and I get photographs of every cleaning via text. And I don't know if you were in the restroom facilities at Community Park, but that's just an example. They do a wonderful job, and we have a good crew now, and we feel comfortable that we're going to see a decrease in that. And hopefully it'll be a decrease that you'll be satisfied with.
So the parks that don't have restroom facilities where we have to have porta potties, is it more economical to have the restrooms versus the porta potties, but we can't do it because of MSD? Is that what you're saying?
Well, let's take example Al Foster, which is probably the most popular trailhead in all of West St. Louis County, if not to a certain degree, much of St. Louis County. That particular park, we retained a groundwater well. We didn't close it, we capped it. And the intent was to have the groundwater serve a traditional restroom facility. You have to get a state permit to convert a private well, which had served a home, to a public well, an entity like us. But before the state would issue the permit, Missouri American Water Company, which services the area, has to agree to grant a variance, and they didn't. And so to bring potable water in, it was as much as the cost of Glencoe City Park and its construction. And so we don't have water, so we have to use facilities that are either temporary, portable, or in the case of like the main facility at Al Foster, we capture rainwater off the roof gutters, and it goes into a tank, and that's what's used to flush the toilets. And then we pump in clean water for hand washing.
Thank you.
Is the cleaning service hourly? Is that based on our hourly rate?
Yes.
Can't we do a flat rate on that?
We can certainly ask.
I'd be easier, I would think, to manage and no overtime and that stuff.
We can certainly ask if there's a flat rate associated with them, but as I say, we've looked at other providers when public water closet was going through the transition. And what we found is nobody does as much as they do, or were willing to do as much as they do. So it's a very specialty service right now.
Anyone else? I have a couple questions. First of all, I'm disappointed at Missouri American Water. I thought that we probably did them some favors along the Al Foster Trail with the water connection down to Eureka and so forth. Why were they so reluctant to give us, throw us a bone with the water at the Glencoe Park?
Well, that was 2007, 2008, so a while back. Obviously, the extension of the water main to the city of Eureka is much more recent.
Oh, okay, so could we revisit it, or has the well been retired, or?
The well has not been retired. We could certainly revisit it. When the city was negotiating with Missouri American Water Company about the main to the city of Eureka, one of the things we asked, and the Missouri American Water Company graciously complied, at the intersection there, just past the tunnel on the south side of Old State Road, the main goes along Route 109, then cuts into the Mariners property. They put a Y in the main, so that if we wanted to extend a water line from that area by the tunnel, there's already a Y and it's set up to just accommodate this simple installation of a main down to the Glencoe area. We tried desperately hard to get them to at least extend it to Washington Avenue. And then that way we could work with the residents to see how best to bring water, potable water to the area, but we didn't have much of a negotiation advantage. And so we ended up with the Y, which I appreciate very much. They didn't have to do it and they did it no charge to.
So that would accommodate the whole hood down there, but if we want to put restrooms in the park, it's still a valid question to ask how much it might cost to, how much of an effort it would be and how we would benefit.
Well, and I'm sure that those that are much more attuned to accounting and depreciation and all those things, the city, we talked about putting a permanent restroom facility at Old Pond School. It has 2 portable restrooms on site. We went through the bidding process, and this was several years ago. It ended up the restroom facility for there was approximately $115,000. And so from the perspective of this committee, the members at that time, and the city council is that's just a little bit too much for a restroom that will be used, but to what extent? And I make assumptions that they get used regularly. I know they do at some of our more popular locations, but I don't know at Old Pond School. So just remember, there is a cost here and the cost accrues over time. Obviously, what we're paying, we could purchase that in a couple of years. But it's also, it's a lump sum that oftentimes the city council just doesn't necessarily feels the appropriate time.
I can't assess the value of restrooms in parks and so forth, but I thought there was a built-in restroom inside the Pond School because I asked before a couple of years ago, and I swear you told me that there was, even though I thought there were porta potties. So, and I've been in the building since, and there seems to be a restroom. So, what gives?
Well, and again, there is a permanent restroom facility that's connected to MSD inside Old Pond School.
Okay.
But to make it accessible during use hours, we'd have to leave the building open.
Oh, I see. You're suggesting a restroom, separate restroom for the park.
Outside.
Yeah, that doesn't, okay, all right. So I had a couple of questions about the right of way real quickly. Whether we're doing, flat rate argues against this approach, but conservation guys typically, if they have an odd shaped field or something like that, they just draw a polygon as best they can, and then they have a program that inserts smaller little dots or whatever, and it figures out with a fair amount of accuracy what the square footage is, and you can definitely get to within a, some tiny fraction of an acre. That you should look into that because it's really.
That's exactly.
Exactly what GIS does.
Yeah, so we're taking GIS it takes the mapping software, you create those polygons and then you outline the area in which you need to cut.
But you suggested that you couldn't, and.
Oh, we can do it. That's what
Okay.
we're working, he's currently working on all
We're
of
just
our
working on it and
inventory.
it hasn't been done.
Yeah, so we have a lot of it already outlined. Now it's just getting it all finished because he just kind of started it.
Okay, all right.
So in that case, that will be done though shortly, and we'll have pretty much, you'll be able to go through a mapping inventory page by page of what we're cutting. And we'll be able to price that out based off the number of cuts at that location.
Okay, the final comment is that it gripes me, people view this in 2 ways. Some people like a median that's cut like a golf course, and some people are fine with it naturally, especially if there's fewer mowers and less of that kind of activity, and it saves gas and it saves costs and it saves this and it saves that. Problem is, the taller things typically are not native grasses and plants, they're weeds. So you have to kind of strike that balance. But have we looked into evangelizing to the public that this is saving you money and it looks more natural, and it's not that we're not intentionally not mowing it because we're cheap, it's because it looks just fine.
Yeah.
And so Could we possibly explore that?
We can for sure, and we have done this in a more limited extent, on some of like, we were supplementing some of MoDOT's cuts on Highway 100 to keep that looking pretty. From pretty much the entrance of Wildwood on the east, going westbound, pretty much all the way to Pond Road.
Yeah.
So in that case, we were doing that last year, cutting it consistently. We pulled back on that
Yes, you
this
did.
year.
Mhm.
And it grew for a little bit and we would get quite a few calls and then we would get calls about litter. Typically residents, that's when you start getting quite a few calls at City Hall. They're gonna call and say, hey, the grass is looking ridiculous at X location. We're supposed to get 3 cuts from MoDOT on that strip specifically, but when it comes to our grass, I mean, it would potentially work. It would probably be site specific. If it's somewhere where we're not necessarily cutting all the time, then maybe that would make sense.
So if we informed the public that it's a strategic move not to mow as often, maybe those complaints would calm down, because there's always gonna be a few people that want it to look like a park. And I've personally felt it was ridiculous that we did the landscaping enhancements out by Pond Road and those few little stretches when the rest of it is wild and we have to count on MoDOT to mow it. And it's jarring. That's my.
Well, that's the other thing too, is when you're coming in from Ellisville, you'll notice, I mean, they actually do supplemental cuts for MoDOT as well. So they keep that grass there pretty dang short. And then what usually happens and what we get the most calls about on that specific stretch is that the minute you transition from Ellisville to Wildwood on Highway 100, since they keep that grass so trim, then it makes our grass look like, the residents that have called us and individuals that express this opinion said the city makes it look unkept in an area that we're trying to promote economic development. Where it could maybe work is where I'm thinking,
West of 109.
Yeah,
That's the
different.
logical way.
yeah. So like maybe there's a certain area that we identified that we can then put natives in there and just hopefully see them grow.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You see, along the highways a lot, you see signs, native habitat, maybe, prairie restoration and meadow restoration. I think people would have a lot more appreciation for us doing that if we let them know that that's in fact what wouldn't it be cheaper and just healthier and better. But I think the road medians looked a lot better this year than they did last year. My personal opinion. So, okay, anybody else have anything? Mr. Ottenberg.
I was listening to your suggestion about leaving some of the medians go native and so on. And I think the key would be, and you just mentioned it, having the signs out there
Yes,
to let
yep.
them know why we're doing it.
Yes.
Because I think if we try to tell them, I think probably their initial reaction is just going to be, oh, you're just trying to save some money by not cutting the grass. But if we put the signs out there, most people expect it when, communities and so on are trying to preserve native grasses or prairie grasses or whatever.
I keep saying wild, it's right in the name,
Yeah.
and people love our parks because they provide quote unquote wild spaces. But they want bluegrass in the medians and I think if you're right, if we had signage and a little program to let folks know, I think it would. So, is that yes? What's that?
A one pager on the
Yes,
website, just
absolutely.
explaining,
I mean, we brought people around on.
And-
your management.
also in our new landscaping guidelines.
Well, I was gonna say, we can't,
The same,
Okay, is that what you were gonna say, Joe?
actually, I had a couple of more comments on items that Tom touched on. If I
Okay.
may. I'll be very brief. In terms of park maintenance, obviously you're seeing an increase of approximately $50,000. And that takes into account that Village Green will be online this coming year, 2025 as well. I would note that in terms of the concert series, we will be holding the concert series in 2025 in Village Green. Some of the costs that we usually incur, I'm thinking primarily electric, should be addressed over there because we're installing all of the electricity to accommodate not only concerts, but the Celebrate Wildwood events with all the vendors and their different cookers and things like that. So the $80,000 is our best guess if we continue forward as we have. Until we get the first concert or two under our belt, probably won't have a good idea how much we're saving, but eventually at mid-year, next year, I think I'll be able to give you some good news, at least in terms of the concert series and some reductions. I would also note, going back to the park maintenance, each month we give you an update on cost, expenditures and revenues. Tonight, you'll see, and we're through September, 9 months of the year, or through quarters. We're right at about $358,000. And we have still 3 months to go. The good news is once we get into November and December, the numbers drastically become less. They reduce, they become lesser, and that there's a reduction. And so I think we'll, at $400,000 is a good number. The Celebrate Wildwood, that also too, now moving to Village Green, may be less than what we anticipated. Again, last night I mentioned the extra $5,000 was because of our 30th anniversary celebration. And then finally, just in regards to the farmer's market, I did have a conversation with the market manager, Natalie McAvoy, and she does want to come back in 2025 and requested no increase in her salary. So this will be either the 4th or 5th year where she'll make the same amount as she did the previous year. So just some updates. Thank you.
Mr. Grant.
Just a comment on the farmer's market. There's a musician that doesn't make a whole lot of money. Is there any way we could allocate $100 for his service? I was down there, and it was kind of depressing. Nobody was putting money in his card case.
Well, he's so far away from where people walk by, so.
Is this Nate?
I like the music is what I'm
So he's
saying,
the son too.
but anyway, suggestion.
So obviously, I think most of you know it's Miss Clark's, Mr. and Mrs. Clark's son. And at this, prior to the start of this season in May, Ms. Clark contacted me and wanted information on the market manager and how she might be able to connect her son with Ms. McAvoy. And for the most part, that's all I did. I got the connection and I had the conversation, arranged the conversation. Ms. McAvoy is the one that manages the market. And so I made the assumption, incorrectly, that there had been some agreement worked out between the two parties. Ms. McAvoy is the manager of the market and Mrs. Clark's son. There wasn't, and he was depending on tips and gratuities. Near the end of the season, Tom, in his graciousness, agreed that we would do a short-term contract with Ms. Clark's son. We sent the contract to him. We didn't get it returned. I think it was maybe just too late in the season. I don't know.
He had a health issue, emergency.
Oh, okay.
He had a health emergency.
So certainly, if that's something the committee and then city council would like us to do, we can investigate it. I feel bad. Nobody should be out there for 2.5, 3 hours, and particularly in late June, July and August.
He does a good job. I
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Yes.
Take home $10. That just doesn't seem right when everybody else is profiting off what the city is
Then
offering.
he enhances the market with the music, so. So what can we do then?
We'll look at it and see what we can do.
And we can come back.
So just for your information, Miss McAvoy's salary is $18,000. And then $1,000 of the overall $20,000 is set aside for organizational memberships for her and just some additional funds if there's an emergency. The remaining $1,000 of the overall $20,000, that's money the city keeps for just purchasing tents if we need them, channelizers if we seem to lose them. I don't know where they go. They actually do have feet, I think. And so do pylons and all those things. But so we have some money available. We'll just have to negotiate what is a fair price for your services and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay, there's no action required. Tom, are you done with the budget?
I was gonna go on to planning next.
Okay.
And then, okay, so then, real quick
Can I ask
overview.
one last question on the budget? It has nothing to do with any of the dollar values. It has to do with the budget goals for 2025. And number 6 in particular, where it says install new security system at the John Nola Cave and Royal Trailhead, protect the assets there. So I was just wondering if the thought behind installing this security system is in part possibly replacing the restroom facilities down there that are not there at this point in time.
It is our hope, Mr. Attenberg, that once the camera and light are in place, that we can return the portable restroom facilities to that location. And hopefully they won't be damaged. And if there is some vandalism, it's minor and can be easily repaired. What we were seeing is they were actually getting blown up by something.
Yeah. And that those costs are
Cherry
then
bombs.
passed on to us, but
Teenage
that's
boy.
why we're looking to install the security camera foot now that would hopefully catch any perpetrator that is doing such activities. If they're watching, please stop.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
They continue.
All right, over to planning then. Just wanted to quickly note the increase in postage. We are starting to email out quite a bit of items here at City Hall, so that increase is, so it's really just following the trend in which we are currently at. And they did, postage did just go up once again in early July. It's in line, but in this case, we did have a lighter amount for we were trying, we thought we were going to be able to get a little bit of a better deal on postage in general. But we did save some money in our equipment leasing. We have a deal with Ricoh where the product that we're using, the machine that's our commercial printer, is saving us quite a bit of cost each month. On top of that, though, the real increases here, you're gonna see across from the printing expenses. Those are gonna be most of our public notices that we're sending out. We do send out quite a few public hearings notices, and then we also send out just updates every time. Like one of the more miscellaneous items would be like the AT&T projects that are going on. We'd send a letter to all the residents that we know are being impacted, just to give them a heads up and let them know if they have issues. Here's the number to call, here's the email. So those types of items that come up day to day. On top of that, though, just pointing out quickly that the consultant costs are pretty much the same too. I was mean to say the contractual services, we did see a slight increase there. But it's been on track with the original budget that we had back in 2024. Yeah, if any questions, let me know.
Yes, Mr. Lunich.
And to complement Tom's presentation, a couple of things. Part of the increase in postage relates to the upcoming master plan process. As you know, in past years, we've always done at least 2 citywide mailings. One at the start of the process to engage the community and participation. And then as we get the draft document finalized, to basically notify them of public input sessions or public forums where they can come and participate. And we actually take the show out on the road and do them in nearby schools and different locations. Not all 8 wards, but we generally do at least 4 and combine the wards, 2 on the northeast, 2 on the northwest, et cetera. So that's part of the reason. And that is also why you see the consultant cost, contractual services cost higher. We're hoping to have some type of facilitator help us with the meetings on the master plan. And then also the committee at its last meeting agreed to potentially engage Jonathan Barnett to do just a peer review of the document as we begin it, to see if there's any gaping holes in the last 10 years. And then as we get closer to the end, to give us any insights that we might have missed. Thank you.
Anything else?
Not on planning, but now,
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
Number 250 internet connection. Or excuse me. Service contracts. Okay, you're setting aside service contracts. My bad. I was having either dyslexia or my eyes were going up and down.
I think that my understanding is that the planning, the part, your side used to pay for its own internet service. We split it up, but now it's covered up the entire internet service for our public Wi-Fi down here and then our upstairs more private network are both covered under the admin budget.
Okay. And then for planning purposes, and this may be totally off of these budget items, where are we at with our internet implementation? Is that in the admin and public works? Okay.
That'll be, and actually, we will get, you do get a little piece of the pie here. We'll talk about it in 2 seconds.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Ready to move on?
All right, well, we got just one last thing. One of we also, as a part of the review here at committee, we wanted to bring up the capital improvement sales tax fund, specifically the parks and trails portion of it, but I think it's also with Ms. Dodwell's question there. What you'll notice on the, and this is in the back, and I do apologize for not having page numbers. In this case, if you go to the item that's titled just 2025 capital improvement sales tax fund, it's got kind of a breakdown of where the funds are coming from and et cetera, and grants, but then there's also the 5 years. So there's a couple items on here. I'll let everybody get their place.
This one or this one?
I would turn to the one that's showing where it's coming from. There's 2 pages, one that shows just a breakdown of the actual cost itself. This would be the page that would be, as the fiscal year spending, the fund source, the source of the funds, grants shown, interfund transfers shown, other sources shown, and then showing how much actually is coming out of the capital improvement sales tax fund.
I'm sorry, I don't understand where we are.
It's titled Planned Project Expenditures.
Yes, it is the plan project.
Here's one right here.
Yes, that one's correct.
Which one is
This
this
one,
one?
page right after that.
This one.
This one?
Yep, that one. Oh, wait, a minute. Oh, sorry, guys. I should have numbered these big time. You don't mind turning the page there real quick. That is a rough breakdown. I wanted to show just for your internet question. I wanted to show how we did it. There we go.
This one?
Now, one more page. There we go.
Okay.
It's a smaller type print that just says 2025 capital improvement sales tax fund.
Whoa.
Planned project expenditure funding, but it's in smaller type. So just keep
There
going
is-
through.
there is larger type
Smaller
print.
type one.
Can I ask a question here? Abatements, isn't that a reduction? What's that mean, abatement?
Abatement is, so anytime, so I can explain that real quick. So say there is a nuisance that we identify and we go to abate it. We have to still, that's when we go out and we have our contractor do the work, they'll invoice us and we'll look to either put a lien or get reimbursed. But it's still an expenditure on the books. So we have to count it as an expenditure, even though we might count a subsequent revenue from getting paid back. Abatements is really, it's more, I know it says abatements, it should actually say cost to do work that's covered under an abatement. And then
Okay.
that would be separated out as miscellaneous revenue.
Okay.
All right, so I do apologize for this is all for the capital improvement sales tax fund, they're all a rendition of the same thing, except the difference between the 5-year. But each one shows the planned expenditures, kind of shows where the money is coming from. One quick item I want to point out is last year we had a similar amount budgeted, but really, when it comes down to the revenue, we're kind of outpacing ourselves. That's something I would like to mention tonight, that last year we budgeted approximately 10 million bucks going towards our capital projects. This year, we're around that same amount, just looking at our strategic plan and looking at the projects that we have on deck, especially the ones that we're tied to. It gets lighter as time goes on if you look at the 5-year, but it is something to keep in mind is that we're bringing in what we're bringing in on the revenue side is approximately $2,875,000 each year. We're able to calculate that we're probably gonna make around 400,000 off interest income from that amount we hold in our account from the revenue we're bringing in. And in that case, that's only $3.275 million truly that we're getting as almost not guaranteed because interest rates can change. But that number is pretty static around that 3 million mark. It has been, it goes up each year as inflation goes up, but it's something to definitely keep in mind just because we have a lot of projects on deck. If you look at the 5-year, you'll see that. But then also if you look at this next year, we have a lot of projects that are currently, they're at that point where they're coming to fruition, which means there's going to be a lot of dollars spent here in 2025. Another quick note here too, before I dive into this, I wanted to really quickly go over the internet piece. If you look at the item that, if you look at the item down below, it's on that second page. It's under other capital investment, internet access project phase 2. You'll see that the total out of the capital improvement sales tax fund budgeted is $1.486 million. An interesting note here, though, on that is that $1,010,724 came from the charter settlement fund that was a transfer in from the general fund. We got the settlement in 2023. The subcommittee was formed. They then discussed and deliberated, filled out the project matrix, and then came back to council with a recommendation. And it was recommended that in the next fiscal year, that we would apportion that money towards phase 2 of the internet project. So that's why that is placed here. But you'll also notice, and if you look, and the reason why I called out this document over the others, is if you notice where the funding is coming from, you'll see that there's an interfund transfer of $476,000. That's the interest income we've earned off the ARPA funds since 2021. That being said, we would, to clean this up, because we have to report to the federal government on that ARPA funding, we want to move the money that's the interest that we've gained out of that fund, and then pretty much we're going to have to, as Spectrum, split it into 2 agreements, unfortunately. One will cover the rest of our ARPA funding, so it's all under one federal banner, if you will. And then the other will be this funding, because we have another $468,000 that we have in ARPA funds that are remaining that are left over after phase 1 was paid off. Yeah, so we have, to get the numbers down, Pat, we have approximately, we're right around $2 million that we have on this phase 1A, phase 2 of the internet access project. We anticipate actually a pretty comprehensive proposal to come in shortly, so that's good news to hear. And the minute we get that, we'll be bringing forth to council.
Speaking of which, are they in the field now doing their?
So
final
they,
cost?
originally, we were going to do the walkout agreement, and they had told me, I can't speak too much to it just yet, but they had told me to pull that back because they're just gonna include that cost into the overall proposal and just present. I mean, I guess that we've been asking for that exact thing for the last 2 months, and they had said that they needed the walkout done first, but I think that they are able to do this work without.
And then
Maybe they've already been doing it, they've been out doing restoration anyway, so I assume that they might be kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. At least that's what I was able to read off of it, but.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so the conversation we had about Spectrum not completing some work, have you gone back somehow and checked? Because the instance we talked about, Jeff ended up doing his own, basically. They stood there and he had to dig where the
So,
infrastructure went because they said they couldn't do it and they were just gonna walk away.
well, they shouldn't be walking away. We hired actually, because at the end of the day, there's 2,000 addresses, so we tried covering it with our code enforcement team and myself and Melanie. And it just, with our full-time jobs, it's a lot of work. So we brought on Cochrane at a not to exceed 10,000 to go out and inspect these areas, and they have provided a pretty detailed report to each individual area that needs restoration, has pictures detailing the work that needs to be done, and then that has been submitted to Spectrum. So they have to pretty much comment saying this is done or not to each one of those items before we'll pay that last payment along with the certificate of substantial completion.
Okay, so we're gonna somehow make sure they've lived up to their obligation and done the work that they were supposed to do.
Yes, and then when it comes to the actual internet service, then they have done that part. So those people have signed up. We've had no one report even that we were able to see that can go online right now. If they're in that invoice list, they can go out on the website and sign up now. But when it comes to the restoration work, I think you're referring to,
That was actually laying the fiber, I think.
so is it laying the question is there though, was it laying the fiber, the actual infrastructure to get to the home, or is it laying the fiber from the infrastructure in the right of way to the home itself? Because sometimes that part is, that's where the city just no longer handles it.
On the infrastructure, we don't handle that.
We handle the infrastructure.
Yeah,
but
I
we won't do
think,
the personal install.
yeah, I don't think they could, I don't wanna
Is-
misspeak, but they couldn't get the equipment they needed in the ground because they said couldn't dig up the ground. So I don't know if it was going to the house. I honestly don't know where it was going to. But They
It was
could, they
going
could
on
dig up,
Stoner's property.
yeah,
Okay,
From-
so
yeah.
that's not part of the agreement that the city has, correct?
we have to put the infrastructure in, don't we?
We
So
put
it-
the infrastructure and the
Infrastructure.
fibers running down the street.
Personal service.
That's,
That's,
the key word is access to service, so they have to be able to sign up, but they, and the thing is, within the first 6 months, which that is rapidly approaching zero, most people will now have to pay for that personal install. Cause it's 6 months after it becomes active. We had it capped at, it was a $65 savings, so $0 if you're within 400 feet of the right of way, and then capped at $99.99 after outside of 400 feet from the right of way. So in that case, if
But up
they're
to a
on-
certain number, I'm sorry, up to a certain number of feet, then the city pays, or the ARP funds pays for it.
No.
No.
So we are literally, so before we came about with this project, they couldn't even, they could say they called Spectrum and said, hey, I'd like to sign up for service. They would just say, hey, there's no infrastructure out there. We can't hook you up. They could do a serviceability request, but that would then lead probably to a subsequent amount of money. The city is pretty much paying up front for them to have coverage, pretty much be able to call Spectrum and then install personal service to their home. We don't cover though, and we kind of get a hands-off approach the minute they take a wire that comes from that node or just from the wiring that's coming out from the general right of way. When they take that to the personal home on personal property, that's when the city's no longer involved. But if there is someone that's invoiced and if they run into that issue where they don't have access, they can't call and sign up, then that's a problem we need to be aware of. We haven't ran into that yet. But if that does come up, then that's something that it would need to be reported as soon as possible.
Sure. So when you,
I don't understand why somebody would be out there
Yeah,
trying to
yes.
install something if it wasn't something that we were requiring them to install. I don't,
So the,
did the user call? Did
That-
the
that's a
resident
good-
call
yeah.
and ask for charter? to-
they just showed up.
Well, they may have been doing other restoration work or something.
Yeah, they're not forced to install.
Yeah, they don't have to install it. There's no guarantee to have the actual installation to the home. It just has to be that home is now eligible for service. So I know that's kind of a silly way to word it, but the person still has to schedule a meeting or installation with Spectrum where then typically they'll be charged up front, like, hey, you're paying the first month of service. And then they'll come out, install it and survey the area. And then they'll run typically a wire from the right of way into the same entrance of the house where your Ameren runs in. But that part, the city has nothing to do with that piece of it. It's more so we looked at it from a perspective is if I live at this address, can I sign up for service today? And we were able to go in and find that, yes, you could. So that's, but if there's a person out there that was in the phase 1 list that was, hey, I got covered and was confirmed by the city, yep, you're on phase 1. And now today, they can't sign up for service, meaning they called Spectrum said you're out of our service area, then that's a problem that we would want to address and we would be able to get them fixed up.
Well, I'll have him call you because they had Spectrum to start with. So
So they had Spectrum service?
It probably was cable and not.
That would make sense too. Yeah.
just a couple of quick questions. I get this from a friend that has it out in Ward 6. Now, when you say walkout, are you saying this is the end? Or are you
Oh.
signing off on it with a walkout?
No. So they're coming back to us with a proposal.
Okay.
Originally, they wanted to do a walkout before the proposal, which was gonna force the city to pay for them to engineer a set of plans and put a dollar sign on it. Now they're just doing that portion. I think it's probably because they were killing two birds with one stone since they've been out in that area.
So there's still gonna be a connection. The other thing, he's not happy with Spectrum. He's a guy that likes to complain, and I just listen, you know, and can he go back to the old way with the Bray, was that the,
I mean, if the service is still available, he can,
you don't know if it is or not, that's just.
yeah, I was gonna say, if the
I'm ready to tell him to go.
whatever service is available to him, he can definitely close his account. Typically how those Spectrum are.
I mean, he needs to call Spectrum to straighten out his problem. He says he loses service and like I said, I just listen but thank you.
No problem.
Responsibilities.
No, I think I'm good.
Stratford. You good?
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else have anything else? You have.
Just wanted to quickly point out that, just looking at these items, a lot of these they're tied to either, supplemental agreements that the city has already approved. But we do have a pretty hefty amount of work we got going on next year. So more so, we can have this discussion now or more at the full council, but really looking at it in a sense that we may just have to have a difficult conversation because if we spend $10 million out of capital each year, that's not gonna be good. We're gonna be in the red year over year. So you can have this occur every now and then, because we do have, and this is an interesting point to bring up, we're gonna be encumbering some funds for Manchester Taylor, so that's one item. We're gonna have Route 109 BA, we're gonna be making our payment to the J-Turns project, making our payment for the left turn lanes project. We're gonna have Old State Road shared use path go out next year. So this is a kind of a unique year, especially when you add in the 1.486 million for Spectrum or internet. It's a little bit unique because of how many projects are going out the door and just so happened the timing. But just wanted to remind that we do not bring in 10 million in revenue in this capital improvement sales tax fund. So in that case, we really, I don't really know how to say this, but in the future, we may just have to look at our 5-year capital improvement program because I got currently on the 5-year, in 2026, we've got scheduled 8.4 million. And then in 2027, we've got 11,121,000. So it's the next 3 years are stacked and we may have to start looking at those and say, hey, what the 5-year is horizontal.
Yes.
And I'll provide a digital copy of this after the meeting, by the way.
So we're not close to running out of money, are we?
No, we're not close to running out of money, but it's more so if we do this for multiple years where you're spending potentially $10 million, then yes, we will run out of money. So that's really the point I'm trying to make is we may have to,
Slow it down.
slow it down or maybe, put a project on the back burner till we can find a funding mechanism. I know we've had success, but a lot of the times where we've gotten funding from the federal government, the Highway Transportation Commission, usually it's doing an improvement to a state route or a county route. It's not doing improvements to our route. So it's kind of playing with the devil there. It's, you only pay 20% for the improvement cost and it is benefiting our residents, but it's not improving our asset. It's improving someone else's asset. Which another important item to point out here, if you're familiar with last year's budget, the J-Turns and left turn lanes project, I just wanted to point this out. There used to be a much larger number associated with those two, and then it would have subsequent grant funding. It is still something we're getting federal funds for, but we've determined now with MoDOT how much we truly owe for the project after all the credits for engineering, all the credits for pretty much mapping out the project. So in this case, when it comes to true expenditures for the J-Turns project, we only owe, and most likely, unless the project has a ton of creep, we would only pay $252,000 for the installation of those J-turns. And then for the left turn lanes, it's $1.181 million. So in that case, both of these projects are around $3 million each. So we are getting a decent amount for what we're doing. But when you add all these together, it does start to, we can't do this for multiple years running. And that's really the point. The 5-year, we would just need to have some difficult conversations. What needs to get funded and what needs to actually get some grant funding associated before we can take action.
So what's the sustainable figure? If 10 this year, 8 next, 11 after that.
So
In my mind, that's about 10 million a year. What can we actually?
So for next year specifically, let's just use that as an example, and that is taking into account 2,361,000 in grant funding. So this should be tied to grant funding, half of it should. But next year, true 1-to-1, we would have 5,636,000 to go towards our capital projects. But if we say you don't get a single grant towards any of your projects for the year, then we would really want to stay around that 3,275,000 mark. So we're well over where we should be, but we do have some grant fundings tied to it. And in this case, one last item too is that it is tough so we wanted to separate out the charter project, but something to keep in mind is that 1,010,000, that was general fund, and we're switching it into the capital improvement sales tax fund. And then the 476, that's coming out of the ARPA fund. So these aren't actually driving from the ARPA fund itself, capital improvement sales tax fund itself. So that one, we put it in here because that's where the council voted to put it last year when they moved the settlement funds. But in this case, it's not that cost specifically is not directly affecting the dollars we have in the ending fund balance for our capital projects.
So we have additional funds that aren't accounted for here.
Yes, so in that case, say we spend every single dime that we have budgeted next year and we get all the revenue that we anticipate, we would have an ending fund balance in 2025 of $5,561,694. That's on the combined,
Balance to,
it's,
to work with, or
that would be our ending fund balance if we spent in no other grant monies and we spent everything on this list at $10,212,874. That would leave us with a capital improvement sales tax fund ending fund balance of $5,561,694. So we still would have, per se, money in the bank, but we would be drawing, at this, right now, at the end of 2023, our actual audited numbers, we had $12,127,000 sitting in the capital improvement sales tax fund.
So what's our reserve then?
Total, our reserve is around 19 million right now.
And that's just sitting there by itself.
Well, a lot of it's invested. So a lot of these monies are currently invested in either T-bonds or in CDs.
So we got 18 to 19 million dollars invested?
Yeah.
Wow.
We do. So we do have quite a bit in reserves. That being said, some of it is sitting in our capital improvement sales tax fund. The rest is really sitting in the general fund. But that's the whole discussion we've been having a lot in admin PW too, is that, what is a healthy reserve amount? But the same thing goes for our capital projects. The 5-year is much longer and more extensive than our, the main message I would say is that we have quite a few things on the horizon we've got to pay for. So we just need to be very cognizant of, new funding mechanisms, different grants that could be out there, which we're looking for. And then also looking at the potential new projects coming in. What's that price tag gonna be?
What about City Hall for repairs?
So I have currently, the department's got 100,000 set aside. We have 100,000 set aside this year, and we have 100,000 set aside next year. Truly, it probably could use more than that, but
Well, let's get it fixed, right? I would recommend more.
in that case, we're open to the discussion. We're repairing 2 leaks now. That's the main prerogative. And then we also have a geotechnical forensic study that was conducted, and we will have a summary report submitted to the ad hoc building committee here shortly. Then it will be passed on to the city council.
Are you recommending more then?
I think the building, currently, we had to replace a boiler earlier this year, which was approximately $54,000. That, obviously took a big swing out of our 100,000 we put aside. That on top of the maintenance that we've been doing around City Hall, there's enough here. We've got cracks on the walls. We got some leaks that we have to plug, and the leaks itself, we're putting guttering, and this was at council on Monday. We're putting guttering on all 3 dormers surrounding the building. And that's $42,000 just for the installation of guttering. That being said, it is copper, so that increased the cost. And then there's a leak in our back hallway in the police station. That is due to just deterioration of the masonry work. So there was a sealant that slowly deteriorated over time. Then we also have a leak at our clock tower that we have really with STAT, the other agreement was on there, will be coming in and taking out the brick that you see and then replacing the interior, what has a gaping hole in it when you actually look at it with a light. And then they'll be replacing with new sealant, pretty much just revitalizing it. And then those leaks will be fixed. At that point, I could go through a big list. Also we want to get the HVAC cleaned up. We need new carpeting. Stairs need probably a study with it along with.
I think we need to get our home in order is all I'm saying.
I definitely agree. And the way we've been looking at it was we want to take a big bite out of it, but we don't want to have the building be the most expensive item on our capital projects. But I think with 100 this year and putting 100 next year, we're definitely taking on a lot of the deferred maintenance that was not being done. Typically you would see in this account in 2022, I think it was $20,000 total that we had for all City Hall improvements and projects to clean up the area, other than there is an operating expense account for maintenance, just generally cutting the grass and things along those lines. But when it comes to real repairs, there was only $20,000 set aside. So we've increased it 5x, but there's probably, I mean, I don't wanna throw out numbers, but there's definitely more than $100,000 worth of work here at City Hall that needs to be done. It's more so kind of slowly taking swings at it, because we also have to oversee the work too, and usually each
Well,
project.
Based on what you're saying, that also brings me to another question on, we've been given several different properties for parks. And in the planning and parks meetings, we've discussed how we have to control the costs on any future development of those particular areas, because we're getting to a point where our assets outweigh our income. And we have to maintain the current assets that we have. And so I would suggest that in 2025, we, the council and staff, take a look at what are our ongoing maintenance costs on all of these things, so that we understand this is how much we bring in, this is how much we have to spend each year to do what we're doing now. And then here's where we have capital improvements and other things. So the more parks we add, the more roads we accept, the more services we provide, it costs more. So we just need.
That's a fair point, and I would just, if with your permission to add a little bit there, is that what you said there too, with accepting streets within, in our town center update plan, we wanted to accept streets and alleys. That's something that you're adding. I mean, a street is something, if you're just resurfacing it, I mean, you could, depending on the length and width, I mean, it could be anywhere between $30,000 and $60,000. But if you're reconstructing that road and adding, utility relocation, or if you're that's why it's very important. We created a policy with the council that goes out, if someone wants to dedicate their street or alley, we have to go out and inspect it, make sure it meets city standards. So that's one component, but even if it meets,
Even after that.
yes,
Then that means we've got to take care of it.
exactly.
And so that continues to increase our overall operating budget. So the capital budget gets a little bit tighter
Yep.
each year, that we have to increase the size of that operating budget, is all I'm saying.
Yes, and then that actually will impact, and once you get the full budget, please review the road and bridge fund. We have approximately around $3 million that goes into that fund as well. But that's more for our general, concrete street slab replacement project or asphalt resurfacing projects, and just more so general bridge maintenance. But yes, those numbers, each time we accept any property, it is inflating our operating costs on the back end. So that 400,000 that you saw that we are needing to increase for maintenance of our parks, that number, not only, I will also mention that the cost has increased too. So that's something that these contractors, they have raised their prices. But the other component to keep in mind is that, the more square, the cool thing about this, the GIS mapping software, is that we're gonna, like you had just asked for, we'll be able to pretty much tell you, here's the grass we're cutting. And eventually get to a point where here are all the roads with a map of the city, here are all the roads that we're responsible for. And sidewalks as well, because if there's a 1-inch indent in a sidewalk, 2 sidewalk slabs, and if someone reports that, then we're liable for any injury at that location. So it's just, there's so many small things that the city has to do, and we have contractors that do them. But everything we add to the plate, it's more money out of the operating. And eventually there will be that critical mass.
Well, we're gonna, if I may, had a lengthy conversation with the St. Louis Assistant Public Works Director. I can't think of his name. You probably know him.
Joe Colessa?
Yes, he was on Old State.
Mhm.
And I went out, met him, and we started talking about roads. He said, don't ever accept any new roads. He says, we are heavily in debt over that. And so that's something to look at down the future. May want to pass something that later on that says we can't do that anymore if we want to be viable as a city, because they don't have money to fix roads. We know that now. So we want to be generous and nice to the citizens. But there's a point where we gotta manage the assets like Katie was saying. I think we have enough parks at this point. They're beautiful parks. I love our parks. I mean, we've done a great job, and now we got another one coming. So there's a limit where we gotta say, hey, we love them, but we just can't afford them at this point unless people want to pay an extra tax for a city park
Well,
tax or something.
and that's where it maybe comes up instead,
Right,
you know, hate to keep
down the
building
road, I mean.
But, and then the other thing though with that is, you know, you have all these assets that are added, it is increasing the cost, but if I, you know, as a standard voter in the city of Wildwood, a resident, they're looking at it saying, oh, you guys have reserves, you're good to go. And not thinking, oh, well, if we build this, then we need to compensate somehow. But really, right now, we're okay because the city luckily has been very fortunate, but we are getting to a point where we keep adding assets and these really premier items. We're just gonna need to be a little bit more cognizant of what gets added to the plate, and how it's funded. So in that case, and to speak to your point about the street acceptance, that was something the town center update plan. The town center update team came together and they approved that. Streets and alleys all within town center can be accepted through our process, but outside of town center, it's a much more tenuous protocol.
We were skirting the line between public works and planning works there for a while, but this was, I think, useful discussion for everyone. Mr. Vunich.
It's probably inappropriate, but I feel I need to defend the department. We spend $400,000 maintaining 15 miles of hard surface trails and natural surface trails. And the amount of miles gets greater when you calculate in the natural surface trails. We spend $3+ million on roads, bridges, and sidewalks. We spend $400,000 on parks. And my department submits a monthly analysis of that to this committee, whereas Public Works, I believe, doesn't. So
That's a good idea.
I'm just saying to you, I think the Department of Planning, along with the Department of Administration, which includes our finance people, do a great job spreading that $400,000.
Yeah, nobody's saying you're not doing a great job.
Yeah, nobody says
We're
you're
just
not.
looking down the road. The parks are, everything we do is great, Joe.
So again,
Yeah.
2018, we purchased 6 acres for Village Green. That was done through the Department of Administration and City Council. Department of Planning and Parks wasn't consulted on that. It was just like, we want to do this because we think it's the right thing. It was an opportunity no one wanted to lose. We got Route 66 Park, a half acre, for $70,000 along Manchester Road. It was a great buy because it cost a lot more than that. The gentleman that sold it to us gave it to us basically for what he thought he could, the taxes he had paid over the course of the years. And then finally, Portner Park was a gift. And we accepted that gift. We could have certainly said we didn't want the gift and it could have gone out in the open market and been sold. That's what the brother of Mrs. Yost wanted. So if you look at the 2025 and the 5-year plan, we have Route 66, Portner Park, and Village Green are our 3 new projects. They have all come either through purchases or donations. No other new parks are shown, no other new trails are shown. And for all intents and purposes, you have a $10.2 million budget. And we have, as part of Parks and Planning, $800,000 of that. Of that 800,000, $500,000 is pickleball courts. So take that out, and we're doing everything we're trying to do in terms of planning, design, engineering, and putting in drive aisles and parking surfaces that haven't been touched for years and years on $300,000. So again, I appreciate you wanting to look at the bottom line, but if there's money to be saved, I'll be glad to be the first to stand in line and say, okay, tell me where in the Department of Planning and Parks. Thank you.
My interpretation of what Mr. Kranz was saying, a sentiment which I share, by the way, is that the town center update team may have made a mistake in being so willing to accept streets for maintenance. We could have figured out a way to accept them for snow plowing and a few things like that without taken on the enormous load of paving and so on and so forth, which is not, that's nothing to do with this incredibly efficient Parks Department. That is having to
It
do
was a
with.
future comment, that's all.
I will concur that it is an efficient parks
Yeah.
department.
It may not be, and we always try to get better, but what I will tell you is the original master plan called for all streets in town center to be public. It called for all alleys to be private. When we did the update of the town center plan starting in 2018, that was the closest vote of all the ones we took, almost 20 of them, and that was 9-6. And the department opposed it. It was adamant against it, and it still passed.
Yeah, we agree. I think I've seen some nods here. We all kind of agree because but something that we don't do well as a city to date is to make sure that everyone, all our residents understand the reality that we're the lowest taxed municipality around. We have, our sales tax is minuscule in comparison to everyone else's, and we don't, not a dime of anyone's real estate taxes goes directly to the city. It goes to the fire department and the schools and the library and so on and so forth. And people think that they're paying high real estate taxes, which they're emphatically not. And they think that it's going to handle the roads and so on and so forth, which it emphatically does not. And so we should take every opportunity to let the residents know about that. And because we can't I don't think we can keep accepting alleys as readily as we can. So that's my comment. What's next, Mr. Lee?
That really covers the capital projects.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Lesser
Sorry,
sorry.
sorry.
So when I go out and talk to Ward 5 individually, they think that we're taxing them, that we have a municipal tax.
Yeah.
And so I always have to explain.
Me too.
So I don't know, maybe we should put something on the website
I believe that's true.
Yeah. how you-
so that people,
Let's go.
Everybody here believes that's.
We have, and when you get your tax bill, it does show.
Yeah, it breaks it down.
Yeah,
I don't.
But we could publish literally just that. I mean, but it was.
it just a written explanation that we don't have a municipal tax.
We have a utility tax.
We do a utility tax.
Yeah, but it's not other municipalities, they have a,
Most municipalities have a utility tax, and that the utility tax plus the sales tax, are full tax revenue.
Plus
bills.
real estate tax. I mean, that's a big.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people, we don't
You don't
get a
touch it.
dime of it.
You know,
Go to Webster Groves. See how theirs look like there. It's crazy.
It is.
I just don't think people understand.
Right, and I think there's a simple way, just a few bullet points that's let folks know that we are a very low tax municipality. And they get a lot of bang for the buck and we don't, that their real estate taxes go elsewhere. Go to
It'd be
these-
like a how we're funded page.
I think so, something like that. I mean, it can be very simple because people like, it's my old joke about, you can condense a 56-page report down to 3 bullet points and one of them is I like Jell-O. And the pointy-haired boss always says, take out the one that says competition is too controversial, right? It's I have a Dilbert cartoon that I send around to guys occasionally with that very sentiment, but it needs to be simple for people to grasp it, and it may take a while, but if the sales tax debate that the pool tax debate that happens in the state legislature every couple of years, one of these days, we're gonna lose it. And if we lose that, we're in deep trouble without other sources of funding, and we have to get people aware of those kinds of realities. So yes, Ms. McCutcheon, I'm sorry.
How many, because this is a personal irk of mine, so forgive me. But how much more money are we gonna spend on roundabouts? They're extremely expensive. And I'm only asking, I know it's admin public works, but I'm asking because it's written in the planning.
So right now, we have one roundabout planned, which is the Route 109 BA roundabout, which in that case, we are getting a match of, we're only paying for 20% of that, but at this time, there is no future plans for any roundabouts.
What about the one at,
Wild Horse Creek Road and
Yeah.
109, so that is completely funded and separate from the city. MoDOT is doing that project and quite quite frankly, there will be some removal of trees here shortly that the city disagreed with. So they are doing that project and I will gladly label them the owners of that project.
So the 20%, what does that equal to in dollars?
So we have so I can give you the exact amount, in 2024, and that we anticipate this going out to bid here shortly, this fall. And in this case, we'll be putting approximately, and this is subject to creep if we get bids that come in extremely high. But we're only putting 600,000 towards a $2.4 million project.
But it's $600,000.
It's a
It
good
is sick.
spot for a roundabout, though. A lot of Wildwood people use that and teachers from Rockwood Valley Middle School and the glare from the sun.
My irk is that we're spending Wildwood citizens' dollars on a state highway. That's my irk.
Well, one important item too, actually, I do apologize for that. It should have been, we're spending approximately 1 million, it's around $1,228,000, but $628,000 of those dollars is coming from an inter-fund transfer from our West TGA fund, our East TGA fund. So in that case, TGAs are charged based off our development, and we have apportioned those in this budget towards the 109 roundabout, since that it has to go towards those roadway improvements.
So that's TGA money we're using.
628,000 of it would be TGA funds, yeah.
Good job.
And then 600 would be coming out of the capital improvement sales tax fund. But yes, it is still a little bit over $1 million that the city is having to put towards that roundabout of something that technically is not our roadway. But we understand that it is, we do understand it will be a vast safety improvement.
Yeah, I mean,
Isn't that the second most dangerous corridor in the city?
It's among them, yeah, so what typically happens at that corridor is people rear end individuals that are turning left onto BA. And then it is pretty dangerous. This will definitely straighten up. It's that in conjunction with the Wild Horse Creek Road and 109 roundabout, both of those combined should decrease a lot of the traffic accidents that we're seeing in that area.
well, and the other part is when the city ever asks for assistance from MoDOT, they say no. Other than these grants, but I didn't say always. I'm just saying for the most part, we'll ask for their assistance and they're like, we have no money. Which I understand. I'm sorry, as my personal irk.
Okay, we're off in the public works weeds now.
Yeah.
Tom, is there any action required for any?
The only action would be to forward this portion of the budget to the full council at the meeting on October 28th for review and consideration.
You need
A motion.
Yep, I'll
Okay.
second.
Mr. Rottenberg and Ms. Dodwell. All in favor? Aye. All opposed, or anyone opposed?
I'm opposed because I haven't really had time to really look it over.
Yeah, it's tough, but we'll hash it again in council, so that's kind of the way. I would, so motion is approved. You really needed numbers to be hard to follow through here, so.
Yeah,
gotta make
we'll get
sure in
page
the-
numbers on there.
In the
Thank
future.
you, both of you gentlemen, for all the work that was.
Yeah, did a ton of work. Kind of last minute here, but I know we need to move forward on it. So I think that was a very good discussion and thanks for laying it out. Next is the City Recreation Center for our schedule for 2025. Mr. Food.
Thank you, Dr. Rambo. Dr. Rambo, members of the committee, one of the responsibilities of this group is to review the proposed event schedule, major event schedule for the upcoming fiscal year, in this case, 2025. For tonight is the proposed schedule. For the most part, it contains 15 major events. Those events begin in January and run through the end of the year, December of 2025. 15 events is one more than we did last year, or this year, I should say, 2024. And that other event is the Veterans Day recognition. That is a new event. This year, we will have a ceremony after the coffee with the mayor on November 8th.
November 7th.
November 7th. There has been discussions internally about trying to do more upcoming years. And so 2025 would be that kickoff year. Many of these events have become favorites amongst our residents, such as the early childhood recreation program, the photography contest, the holiday tree lighting, etc. So tonight, the department is presenting the recreation schedule to the committee for its consideration and action. Thank you.
Comments, questions?
I'll just make a comment, coming from early childhood. The children's activities, early childhood activities are spectacular. They do a super job at every one of those events.
Thank you.
Okay, no action required on this.
Yes, the department would respectfully request a motion and second to endorse the schedule.
Okay.
Motion made.
I'm going to have to go with Mr. Mabry, and who was the second?
Endure.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Thank
motion
you.
is- Next is the 30th anniversary planning again, Mr. Blanch.
Thank you again, Dr. Rambo. Dr. Rambo and members of the committee, first, my apologies on the late receipt of this. And certainly this isn't a heavy subject, so to speak, but the department is seeking some direction from the committee. As you know, 2025 will be our 30th anniversary, and as part of tradition in Wildwood, those 10-year anniversaries have been special, and we do a little bit more each year to try to engage our residents, build greater community, and ultimately have the best event we can when we do our annual celebration. The department has been working with our Wildwood Celebration Commission, and they've kind of initiated a couple of activities or events. Those being the development of a special logo through our residents, a competition contest, so to speak. And then last night we talked about the 30 by 30 challenge. Mr. Lee and Ms. Tart, our communications manager, economic development manager, noted that the Economic Development Committee was also talking about doing something special with our businesses in the 30th anniversary year, something maybe akin to our snowman search or our summer passport series. And the department is just kind of offering to the committee tonight that maybe all of us should get together so we don't duplicate activities. We coordinate activities and make sure that whatever we do it the best we can, and ultimately create a series of events, initiatives, and activities that everybody enjoys and are welcomed by the community. To that end, the department was thinking that maybe just in terms of an ad hoc effort, that the communications manager, the city administrator, representative or more from the Economic Development Committee, representative or more from our Wildwood Celebration Commission, and then the Department of Planning and Parks. And just infrequently or occasionally meet and just kind of catch up where we're headed, what we're doing. And that way, there's no set schedule. It could be on need. The information would be then discussed, provided to city council to keep them addressed. So for the most part, the department is kind of just saying, maybe it's a good idea we meet it with some frequency over the next year and make sure we're all on the same page. And so tonight, the department is requesting your opinion, and if you support such an authorization to kind of move forward and gather that group.
Yes, sir.
It's sounding like a one-off tri-decadal celebration committee. More than ad hoc, but less than something requiring a quorum official meeting to trade notes and avoid duplication and avoid omission. That what I'm getting.
I think the biggest thing, what you said, Councilmember, is that I want to avoid duplication. I don't want to necessarily step on anyone's toes. And I sometimes don't know what the proverbial right hand is doing relative to the left hand. And so just as we come up with major initiatives and we start moving forward, just pull everybody together real quickly, have a quick meeting. It could be on Zoom, just coordinate things and make sure that, okay, you do this, you do that, we won't do this, and et cetera.
Can't be the only one who thought exactly that. We wouldn't have to come down here and meet. We could do it by email. We could do it by Zoom. Good point. So obvious. I didn't think of it that you got economic development, and you got parks and planning, you got Celebrate Wildwood, you got living, this is one that there's so much overlap. I think it's kind of brain dead that we do what you're recommending.
I
We
think
need
the
a
goal is just to make
Go.
make 2025 the best year it can be for celebrating Wildwood and all that we do.
You'd be holding the reins because someone has to. Would this be something that one department would supervise? Kelly?
Our assistant director is wonderful at kind of organizing things, and so I was hoping she'd like want to shoulder that yoke.
That's good delegation.
How do you say no to that?
Thank you, ma'am.
Your description here says, communication manager, Department of Planning and Parks, so I guess that's Melanie. Econ Dev, Wildwood Celebration Committee, our commission, it doesn't say anything about this, you know, folks, representatives from this group. Do you need?
Certainly, again,
Do you need us to figure out the makeup of the group, I guess is the basic question.
yes, if you want to have a representative for planning and parks committee, great. I think it's real flexible.
You've
And
got
I just-
several members from both economic development and planning and parks
Yeah, they're.
in the same committee, so pick who you want to.
Okay, so I think Mr. Mabry was about to make a motion.
Bob, you were gonna volunteer, weren't you?
Well, I'm a newbie, so I'm not qualified.
No, you were ready to make a motion
And
to
that's basically full steam ahead.
endorse this, yeah.
Yeah.
And Mr. Creston has been trying to make motions and seconds all night and I've been ignoring him, so. I'm gonna volunteer him to second it. Fair enough. Okay, so we got a motion and a second to let you proceed at your discretion and make up a committee. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay, motion carried. Next thing is Melanie is going to tell us about the landscape and planting.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I will try to live up to the planning department's very efficient reputation and keep this as brief as possible. Essentially, the landscaping and plantings committee subcommittee was formed to try and combine two pretty large documents. It's about 150 pages between the free manual and the plantings guide, which we put a lot of time and energy into, and had a couple of consultants that we were working with, and it wasn't exactly going the direction that we had hoped. So in August, we determined we should pause and reevaluate this, and in August, we brought it back to this committee. With a 10-step plan that's included in your staff report that essentially consists of taking all of the information that we compiled. There was a lot of time, energy, effort, and a whole lot of information between the subcommittee members and our consultants, and combine all that, figure out what we had, figure out what we didn't have, and try and determine how we wanted this to work, like what we wanted the end product to look like. And part of this would involve our arborist, which we acquired over the last year of working on this. So we would use him as a consultant instead of the arborist that we were using, although we got a lot of really good information from him. And then probably also work with the graphic designer to make it look lovely. And so at any rate, at the last meeting, the committee decided, despite all of the many, very major projects we had going on, we had so much work into this and we're so close that we should prioritize this and get this done as quickly as possible. That being said, it's not going quite as quickly as possible because we have so many other things going on. However, the department has been working on compiling all of the information, and it's at about 60 pages now without even hitting like the glossary and all of that fun stuff. And so we're gonna have to weed through and get rid of some of the information and such, but compiling, it's the first step. And so that's essentially what we're doing. What we're thinking is, after all of this gets compiled and we determine what information is supposed to be in there and what information doesn't need to be in there, or in additional documents, is kind of figure out the format that we want it in. So the first draft that was brought to us by our consultants is an 11 by 17 document. And our objective is to have this as user-friendly as possible. So when the department was talking about it, we're like, who prints 11 by 17s at their house? We would like to have this on our website as a document that people can print, or like have it interlinking within the document so that people can just go from section to section using like bookmarks and such. You click on something, it takes you there, or it even takes you to another website. Our goal with this was not necessarily to provide all of the information in it, but provide sources and resources that people can get the information. It's essentially going to be a living document, so it was also important to the department. So in looking at the 11 by 17, we thought, isn't this more convenient? And so if we can compile all of the information into a little book like this that you could keep in your car, or, that was also printable at home, or even a PDF version of this that was printable at home. I did this with Microsoft Word. I was very impressed with myself. So this is actually just me showing off. But in this document itself, all of the entirety of the table of contents, you can click on any one of those and it will take you to that section. And then once you get to those sections, I took most of the words out of it, but I included in there like little highlighted sections, like tree manual, because we want you to be able to click from there to there and make it as user-friendly as possible on the back end. And so on the back end, essentially, it would be one big PDF-ish, if we can do that without it being too large for people to open it, but also maybe do sub PDFs of the major subjects, like the residence or business. But then on the front end of it, on our website, it would be far more user-friendly, and that like the first welcome page would kind of get you from point A to point B. Like, what are you trying to do? Who are you? Are you a business? Are you commercial? And it would take you to a page for that, and then lessen it down, but then connect you into the PDF. That could also take you throughout the PDF and or to other websites and stuff, but then also have a resources page if that's all somebody's looking for, and have it so that people can get from one document to the next, or we have a wealth of information on our website already. It would be great if we took people to, the page that we have on trees, that has resources in there, but like have it all very friendly so that you can get to and fro. And so that's kind of the goal on the back end. So we've been working on it, and we do have, this in a PDF format that's kind of interlinking, and I'm not sure how that's going to play out with the graphic designer, but we are making progress on it. It's just not as quickly as we had hoped. So that being said, we just wanted to give you an update on where we were at with this, and see if you had any questions or suggestions. And if so, the department is here to answer any of those that we can.
Mr. Mabry, then Mr.
Yeah.
Ottenberg, then Mr. Grant.
I thought I was reading before my laptop down, so I can't refer to this one specifically, but I thought that I was reading a gauge of running out of time. I thought I almost heard a little of that time is a crunch, and trying to make the best of the time available. When I read that, I go, a planting guide is usually really hot off the press during the spring when people are going out to the nurseries and buying stuff head over heel. So is there a suspense to deal with in not having something right now instead of half a year from now?
There really isn't. When we had started this last year, our goal was to have it done by spring of 2024. And so we've already passed that goal, but it was kind of, end of the year, let's just get this wrapped up and get it off of our plate. And that we still have every intention of doing. It's just that it's been a lot going on. And
Okay, so
so
there's no panic to do the job right,
No.
by having it knocked out by Christmas or something.
not at all, not at
Okay.
all. But
Me feel better.
Mr. Ottenberg.
This landscape and planting guide is designed to be used both by residents and by landscaping companies.
yes, so
Recognizing the makeup of many landscaping companies nowadays, should we consider publishing this in Spanish?
What's in Latin right now?
thought you were gonna be impressed with my Latin skills. Now you want to finish too. We could definitely look into that. I feel like it's more of,
Entirely possible.
yeah, it could be really easy with AI now. I don't actually know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful because sometimes it,
I
the
don't-
phrase they give you doesn't
I
actually
imagine that
match.
we have several residents that are Spanish teachers that would be more than happy to
Give it a peruse.
peruse it and
Yeah.
make a change.
But no, I
for
think
us.
that's an excellent suggestion, because it is focused on both developers, and that's kind of the art of it is that, you know, in the development section, it deals with our development regulations and such, but at the same time, you want to be able to direct those developers to recommended street trees that might be in the residential section, or recommended landscaping, or dealing with like plantings in certain types of soil and such. And so having them interconnected is important. So it's both big picture and small.
Wise Latin. I mean, I was gonna go home and read this.
That is exactly why it's in Latin.
So you want me to go on the computer?
Yes.
you to understand it.
What about people that don't have computers? And what about seniors that don't like?
Well,
This
that's
is
the whole
really
goal is that
nice.
we want to have it in a printable
This
PDF.
isn't finished. This is just like an
Yeah.
example of
Okay.
the sizing.
Yeah,
I didn't fill her.
This would have been nice just to have in English, you know, I could
the
sit
language,
down and read in a chair as opposed to, well,
This
Just
is,
not ready.
you really go?
I'm old now, so.
it will be and it will be beautiful. It's just not quite there yet.
Oh, okay.
folks,
And
it's a
this size, we
standard,
could even print this in-house.
Far from getting here.
it's a standard printing practice when you're working with the design of a document to just use, this isn't Latin.
Oh, is that what they do?
This is, I'm trying to remember what they call this type style, but
All right,
at any rate.
I'm with you.
Nonsense.
If you figure out the first paragraph, it's just repeated throughout the document, so
Yeah.
you should have the rest of it, no problem.
The same paragraph
There you go.
of Latin words is in there, but anybody else? We had-
Yes, simply.
I'm just not gonna read it.
This point, description of a motion that you'd like to have someone make.
We don't actually need any action on this tonight, just wanted to give you an update of where we're at and, you know, then let you know that it's gonna take us a little while longer. Maybe the rest of it will just be smooth sailing and we'll have it by next month's probably.
You may want to call on the other committee members that were originally a part of that committee. And let us know where we can help.
I believe the intent is once we get all of the information compiled, we'll probably have another subcommittee meeting and probably send this out in advance so that we can kind of work through what we have together and figure out end product.
Because I can take stuff and write it if you want me to.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Okay, everybody good? One planning matter, development trends within the city of Wildwood, including the new fee for authorizations. That is the department, I guess, Joe.
Again, if there are any questions, typically we respond to questions, don't do a formal presentation.
All right, moving on to parks matters then. The first one is an update on the Village Green project.
Thank you, Dr. Rambo. Dr. Rambo and members of the committee, as is typical, each month the department provides an update on Village Green Phase 1. As you can tell from the tenor of the letter, particularly at the start, we are finally seeing significant progress. I think the photograph that was included on page 1 represents that. It's really starting to take shape and the oval has a defined character now. And I'm pretty excited about the layout of improvements that were ultimately approved by City Council. A couple of items of equally good news. The Essen Log Cabin, that bid package is finally ready. And we anticipate advertising for the reassembly of the Essen Log Cabin, which will occur in Village Green Phase 1, being advertised at the end of October, with the bid opening right around the beginning of December. We have a list of several artisans, artists that have done reassemblies of log cabins. So we hope to first contact them and then obviously we'll advertise it to the general contracting community. So that's good news. We're on the move with the Essen Log Cabin. Less good news is we're still waiting for Ameren, Missouri to provide us a cost for the undergrounding of the electric lines that define the boundary between existing city hall and Village Green. We are doing our best, and I can assure you that Andy Dobb of Bombshell Construction calls them every day. Once we get that cost, it'll be the first thing that you see from the Department of Planning and Parks to you. Secondly, we did the bid opening today for the trash enclosure. Our bids were much higher than anticipated. The highest bid was almost $178,000. The low bid from Bombshell Construction was $110,000. For a trash enclosure, I think the rationale for the bid range and the relative magnitude of the bids is the fact that we asked them to replicate the brick of the city hall structure and basically replace what we took out to accommodate the parking and access to Village Green. From the department's perspective, I think it's way too expensive for a trash enclosure. And I think we need to consider an alternative.
Great panels, I mean,
Some,
precast panels that match up. I mean, it's gonna be it's gonna be where the Mayor's Grove is now, right? So it won't be on the beaten path of any of the residents unless they're coming to City Hall for business, and then they'll say, oh, that's the trash enclosure, right? So,
as nice as the former trash enclosure looked,
it's.
it's a trash enclosure. When you got inside of it, it
In the
looked
corner.
terrible.
Over there.
So I just, it's hard for the department to justify $110,000 for a trash enclosure. So tonight, the department is presenting the results of the bid. I don't have a formal report because we opened them at 8:30 this morning. But I would like, at the conclusion of our discussion, authorization to look at an alternative that's much more affordable, but equally attractive and functional.
Yes,
I was
Mr.
gonna
Mayor.
ask the question, he just answered, so I'll make a motion if I haven't made too many.
You've made a lot of motions. I'm gonna let Katie make the motion and Mr. Krantz
You wanna
make
know what I'd
the
like you to motion?
I think I do.
It's, the first thing I thought of is, okay, make it look aesthetically pleasing, why not copy something else that's just as aesthetically
Yes.
pleasing as a hedge of skyrocket junipers
Mhm.
around a steel tank that costs nothing, and now you got a ring of skyrocket junipers, whatever you wanna call them, and now you got a natural plant that looks like a natural plant, and it's gonna be 20% the cost of $170,000. That's what I was driving at.
There's too many precast options and fake brick options and those kinds of things, so. So we've got a motion on the floor and a second. Got those, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that one carries too, so we're
Your expertise department, go for it.
Last item, and this is something that came from Andy Dobb, the owner of Bombshell Construction, our general contractor. There's been a pretty, I would say, heated debate between the two landscape architects that designed the facility, Andy Dobb and others, regarding the organic lock. So as you'll recall, we have a hard surface that defines the outside perimeter of the oval. It's concrete. On the interior, we have organic lock, which is it's a rock material with an adhesive, so to speak, and it fluctuates in terms of its relative stability or hardness based upon water content. They use it down at the Gateway Arch when they redid the grounds down there. Our landscape architect from Human Nature, who did the master plan for Village Green, all phases, endorsed it, actually supported it. The problem we're having is Mr. Dobbs said there's questions about installation. It's a sole source material that comes out of Canada, and it requires a great deal of maintenance. And so we've looked at some alternatives, primarily Mr. Dobb, and he does have a proposal for pavers, which would be more stormwater friendly. It's an upcharge of $36,000 from the cost of the organic lock. I don't have an example of it, the paver type, but Just wanted to introduce it tonight. He's wanting a quick answer. I told him that probably isn't in the cards. And I just want to kind of let you know, one of the issues now we're struggling with is just, is it really in the best interest of the city, given our concerns about cost, limited staff, to have something that is being described as a fairly heavy maintenance item?
Any questions?
Thank you.
So I have a question, Joe. It looks that, I looked at that product because I did see that write up a couple days ago, and it looks like it is it would be there would be a lot of skinned knees by kids. It just looks really rough. But my question would be about the pavers. Is that just sort of a generic paver price that he thinks he can get done? Some of the pavers are aesthetically really great and some are not so great. And we want it to be at least partially permeable surface, which argues for smaller pavers with more spaces between. What is he suggesting he can do for $36,000?
Let's say the bumpers that were provided along the edge of either side of the lane was, if you provide a hard surface and it requires us to go back to MSD, then the organic block is what we have to do.
Yes.
We can't delay the project for months on end now. Have MSD basically look at it and say, you need to either retrofit or add to your underground retention or do additional stormwater detention somewhere on site. So it had to be equal to or less than what the organic block is from a standpoint of stormwater infiltration management. It had to match the color as closely as possible, that darker organic brown. And from the perspective of the department, had to be an appealing pattern. And so that's what he came back with.
Do we have a picture like?
I don't.
Aesthetics is the concern.
Exactly.
And we don't want it to just look like those cheesy squares you get at Home Depot or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, certainly not. And just to kind of step back, the original argument, and there were, the reason is that 20 feet of paved concrete surface is, there was an argument made that it would look like a road. We didn't want a road around our civic green. And so we wanted to break it up. The harder surface would accommodate the vehicles that travel around basically when we have our events, so they could drop off their baskets, their carriers, their things like that. And then the organic block would be the softer surface and more in keeping with Wildwood. From the perspective of our Department of Public Works, they talked about pervious asphalt as an option. They've had good success with that, not so much pervious concrete, but pervious asphalt. And we kind of settled on paving, thinking if we could find the appropriate paver and at a price that isn't astronomical, this might be the approach. So there is more to follow, but I just want you to know we're kind of struggling with that now as well.
Could you look at Ms. Sodwell in a second? Could you please look at or consider various geogrids like they use at Botanical Garden, for example, and I put some in my yard. It works flawlessly. I can park on my grass when I want to, and all these, you know, all my million friends come over and we have huge parties.
Fancy parties.
But yeah, but those
I've not been
products.
one of those, so I
Yeah.
guess I'm not.
I'll go back to the next one. Anyway, those products are relatively inexpensive, and if you put a gravel base, they're perfectly, you know, it's a completely, it's just like land. There's no added runoff. It's not a hard surface at all, and it's kind of worth, I mean, it would change the character. It'd be grass or something like that, but it might be worth looking at. And anyway,
Certainly.
is that
Well, it kind of ties into my questions because I'm a pictures person, and so are you talking about the entire center area being covered with this? Please tell me no, because I thought we were
No.
supposed to have grass.
No.
Okay,
So around the civic green is basically a 20-foot wide circle.
Mhm.
It defines the interior green space. 10 feet of that'll be the concrete surface, the drivable surface. The 10 feet we're talking about now is the organic lot.
Okay, so that you've got some way to go.
Yeah, the civic green, I think is just going to be a magnificent area.
Yeah.
May rival the Great Meadow,
Is it the inner surface or the outer the inner circle or the outer circle?
inner circle.
So the inner circle
Is
is
this gonna
going
be a
to be
little bit
this
lower?
product yet to be determined, and then inside of that is gonna be grass.
Yes.
So, and just define something that defines the 10-foot wide area that is those geogrid type of product. Then it's all grass but you can still drive on it. I mean, I think that's got,
Brought that up, so we'll investigate that if the
Pretty
community's
cost
okay.
effective.
there's lots of them. They're not that cheap, but they're sturdy.
Yeah.
And and they, if you install them for industrial purposes, you can drive on them. So
I appreciate the suggestion. Out of all of our conversations, we've been meeting every couple of weeks on Thursday mornings, that did never come up.
and he will find it easy to install. It's straightforward. It's either panels, some of it you roll out, the more sturdy ones you lay down, but you have to have a prepared surface, gravel. He knows how to do that. And I think it would be ideal. And no little ones with skin knees either, so.
Thank you.
Okay, so you don't need anything further from us? Oh, I'm sorry, Deb, I didn't see you.
That's okay. So the papers that we're gonna use or whatever it is that we use, that's what council members' names go on? And mayor's names, or what's the story?
No, so if you, wish I,
I mean.
so
There's
the
a,
Mayor's Grove will be relocated from on the east side of the parking area over by the Weston Log Cabin. And the Grove will have pavers in between the grass planting areas. And so that's where the pavers with the inscriptions of all the council members' names will go.
So is it a big enough area for future council members?
Yes, in fact, from the Essen Log Cabin, we can go all the way around that southern arc of the oval. And so the pavers themselves, even if we use the larger sizes, I think we'll go well into the future.
This inside area is the special pavers.
anybody else?
Is.
That all you had on that?
Yes, and thank you for your input. It's much
Sure.
appreciated.
So go around the-
We have Wildwood Recreational Programming update.
That is prepared by Melanie, and Melanie will be glad to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions on the recreation program? Okay, I'm late, but I'm not Galani, so the final matter is facility reservations, event registrations, and ongoing and long-term maintenance costs for parks and trail facilities, and that's probably just anyone have any questions? Any questions on that? Okay, we're all getting burned out about the same time. No executive session matters. Got some not ready for action things. Other matters for consideration. Does anyone have anything to consider? Mr. Ottenberg.
Just one brief question, and I think it can be answered in 60 seconds or less. I heard city administrator make reference to trees being taken out up in the area where the roundabout at Wild Horse and 109 is being constructed. So do I infer from that that's the option that MoDOT decided to go with, is just to clear cut those trees out of there and then basically do away with the retaining wall?
Yes, the retaining wall has been removed from the approved set of plans. And so now it's a matter of just grading it out and using the typical 3-to-1 slope to address the final grade. Key component that ultimately pushed us in the direction of support was that Mike Walsh got involved. We're going to do 95-gallon container trees of his selection and with his input on location. And they also agreed to put deer guards on them to protect them as they're young trees. And then we were able to convince Millstone Weber to do a 2-year warranty. So that we can get them in and then have 2 full, potentially 4 seasons. 2
So there
falls.
will be some trees replaced.
Yes.
How
Oh,
many
yes.
do we know?
90.
90, oh,
Wow,
Yeah.
Is this,
okay,
where is this?
okay, good.
The
109
roundabout
not
at
in
Wild
Wild Horse.
Horse and 109.
yeah.
That BP
I
station.
thought we weren't contributing to that.
We're not contributing to it. They asked for a change in the engineered plan. Change in the engineered plan required a sure woodland area. And so we've been going back and forth with the contractor in the state of Missouri for months, trying to find a mitigation plan that we all could live with.
Okay,
Good
I
job on
haven't,
your part.
I'm sorry.
Good job on city staff's parts.
It'll still result in the removal of quite a bit of trees, so it's gonna be a pretty drastic change to the natural landscape over there.
Are you talking 3 acres, something like that?
No. I don't think trees.
It's about an acre.
Just an acre.
90 trees on an acre is a lot of trees.
It is. And it's like dense thicket too. You'll notice it.
What's growing there now isn't the greatest stuff anyway, so.
Chris reported that it was, to get in there, he had to find a certain angle and most of it was honeysuckle. Was growing in between, so, I mean, that part, but there are some.
Some preventative down.
So I have another matter. The principal Calcaterra at Lafayette High School came to us evidently a few months ago asking for relief from our signage ordinance because they were interested. Every other school around here has LED lighting sign. And LED technology has moved on and we didn't recognize it at the time. But you can direct them to the light to the ground. It's still really bright when you drive by, but it's not light pollution. They're a lot more efficient. There's lots of advantages that accrue to an LED sign. And so she requested of my partner, Colonel Jaxie, that we revisit that request. And so I'm hoping to put it on the agenda for next meeting. I don't know exactly how that works. Joe, do you guys go off and analyze it and then come back with some recommendations, or what will you do for that?
Mr. Lee will coordinate with Mayor Garatano on the preparation of the agenda, but it would be a matter under other in work session, authorizing the department to post an advertisement for consideration of electronic message boards in certain locations in the city.
So this is a public hearing process and it goes to, if we suggest it, then Mr. Lee takes it to the city council.
Mr. Lee will coordinate with the mayor to get it on the agenda so it can be discussed. And if there is a motion to move forward, at least investigate it, not necessarily approve it.
Sure.
It will go to planning and zoning commission first.
Well, they visited it very recently, or fairly recently, but I'm not sure it was killed in an appropriate manner, and I don't think it got the discussion of the pros and cons as it should have. Yes, Ms. Dockwell.
Does Ms. Calcaterra have a spec sheet on what they would like to put out there? So
Do not know.
sense of-
This is secondhand. Rob asked me to get it on the agenda, then I
Okay.
talked to Joe about it and found out that there was some previous discussion about it. And I think it makes a lot of sense here in Wildwood for a lot of reasons, energy efficiency.
Safety.
Yes, sir.
I got one question about our village green. I know we talked about, we're gonna do that park. Do we have to, the tower is gonna, what's the status of the tower then if we do the park?
That's in a future phase. So right now, the tower it's
Still in?
Yeah, so it's still in, but there's also been discussion about the playground that would take the place of
Of the tower. Okay, so we don't have to do anything and notify or change anything? Okay,
Right now.
Well, there's no funding attached to it right now.
curious.
I think the tower's a bad idea. Looking down the road.
I think it's unanimous.
There's some safety considerations on our end.
I think it's a unanimous agreement on the top.
So, okay,
Remind me, Unlimited Play will probably be back at the November meeting with refinements to the plan that was presented in September. Want input from all?
Speaking of which, is that being included in phase 2 of the park. And so we'll be discussing
So for,
phase 2 costs somewhere in our budgetary process.
yeah, so that was actually covered today, so I do apologize for not calling it out.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I do apologize for not calling it out
So quickly.
specifically, but in this case, what we have here, it's in 2026 where we proportioned real funds towards it. I believe it was 200, I mean, not 200. In 2026, we have apportioned $2,500,000 to phase 2 of the Village Green.
Okay,
So now if the 5-year capital improvement program was adopted as presented tonight, that would appropriate that 2.5 million towards the
thank you
park
for
next year.
bringing that up.
So I have an opinion that we should focus on the bandstand or the grandstand or whatever we call that. And if we have to push other things like the ground into it might make sense to do that because we're saving the direction costs and the rental costs. This, it's just my personal opinion with throwing that out there. So you guys can think about it. It's gonna come up. Deb, did you have something?
Yeah, from miscellaneous, I know years ago, we tried to put in a sand volleyball court and we were working with Wildwood Pub or behind Nimberway. So I'm still getting lots of questions about the possibility of a sand volleyball court. Can we look and see what that might cost?
If the committee doesn't object, yeah, we can give you a general cost of the construction. Be glad to have that for you if there's no objection.
I second that because I suggested very early on for community park because there was some,
Community
yeah,
park.
it just seems like, I mean, they're compact. It's a great thing. Families can go there and say, hey, let's play some volleyball. As long as the net's up and they can snag a ball, they're good and it doesn't take any maintenance.
Just,
Don't-
well, there's maintenance for the
There's
sand,
cats.
and so we'll have to pay for sand and replowing annually.
Yeah, I'm,
It's a real thing.
yeah.
That's
Not
a
that
real
it's
thing.
that
It's a real
expensive,
thing.
but-
Like, it's a big
Considerations,
Cost.
yeah.
That's no joke.
We had one at our church.
Yeah. You have all the-
Yeah, I mean, that would be.
Like you.
Maybe they would get, they would get good news to put one in.
It would be smart to use.
For sand?
80,000.
Yes, Mr. Ottenberg.
What's a big
I would
one?
like to make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, do I have a second? Mr. Krantz, it is non-negotiable. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And stay here.